BLGNation.com. BLG chaos across the NFL, my friend. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
I'm doing good. I'm entertained by all the action going on.
Rescind. Have you rescind anything today? What's your first thoughts on Baltimore? Because that looks like some bullshit to me on the surface, what the Baltimore Ravens have done. Your first thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, it's been said by a lot of people, but like, how do you make deals with them moving forward? Obviously, you will to some extent and at some point in time, but right now, like the trust level is not there. That's massive. This is like the thing where, you talk about like, oh, what if you could go back in time? And maybe even if you step on a butterfly that changes the course of history, for all we know, like this changes so much, or could have changed so much with teams, planning around that move having happened, or at least they thought it was happened, and they dedicate assets elsewhere. Like there's so many domino effects to this that the Ravens really screwed with a lot of teams.
No, yeah, they really did.
You think you think the Eagles are gonna make a call, BLG?
There's some buzz out there about that. I don't know, to the extent to take this to the bank, but I saw some a prominent Seahawks podcaster talking about how the Eagles could be involved in there. I mean, beyond that, it just makes sense from a standpoint of if they're reportedly interested in Trey Hendrickson, which lasted very short before the Ravens signed him. Yep. Obviously, they had interest in paying Jalen Phillips to some extent. They need an edge rusher. I don't think it's impossible.
By the way, it's interesting only to me, BLG, but since you brought up the butterfly effect, I actually asked Doug Peterson a butterfly effect question. He looked at me like I had three heads. You might have been there. It was a training camp practice at Lincoln Financial Field. He had no fucking idea what I was talking about. That's a football guy for you.
I miss Doug.
So do I. No fucking idea what I was talking about. Eagles finally made some moves. Where are you on the Riqui Woolen signing? Look, I'm going to be honest, BLG. First thing I thought, this guy's 26 years old. He runs a 4.3. He's 6'4", and he's getting 1 year. I was like, what's wrong? How long did it take you to go down that route, or did you go down that route?
I mean, that's absolutely something you have to consider with any player, who's walking from their current team in free agency. That team, presumably, not always born out this way, but has information and knows more about that player. And kind of funny that Woolen is walking in part because the Seahawks signed Josh Jobe, Jobe. Yeah. Eagles clearly made the wrong call there, I think, between him and Eli Ricks back in the day. I like the signing, though, and not just because of the player, but because of the mindset. This isn't a very good free agent class on the whole. I don't think the Eagles needed to be rushing to pay some of these players, especially the market price it would take. I think a signing like this, and even their previous reported interest in Alontae Taylor, who I also like a lot as a player.
That shocked me, by the way.
I wasn't shocked from the standpoint of the player, and I think that's what.
Oh, the player, yeah.
I think that's the key point here. It's about the player. It's about it's not like, oh, we have these needs, we need to pay whatever the top player at this position is, even if they're not that great, just because they're one of the best players available. They're not thinking that way. I think they're thinking like, if we have an opportunity to get a really cool / good player, and this kind of even goes back to like Saquon a couple of years ago, like they didn't necessarily have to get him or have to get a running back as much as they like wanted to add a really good player at a price they felt like was reasonable too. I think it's more about that. So from that standpoint, I like the mindset.
BLG, how do you think the defense is right now in turn? I mean, I know it's still early and there's a lot of time left here in talent acquisition season, but I mean, what'd you make of the three departures, man? That's a guy, that BLG, that's a starter at every level of the defense for a team that's been a defensive football team for the last 2 years. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, it hurts. I mean, they're not better, certainly, right? Like you literally got worse. Now, Nakobe Dean, we all expected that to happen when you draft Jahad Campbell. And also, I always bring up Jeremiah Trotter Jr. played really well last year in training camp. And he didn't Jahad Campbell beat him out ultimately. But that's not because Trotter was terrible. And I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. stylistically gives you a lot of what Nakobe Dean does. Nakobe Dean is obviously the superior player, but just in terms of like a profile. So
Because Jihad and Nakobe are different, right? I mean,
Yes.
Jihad to me looks more like a Will backer, and now he could be a Mike. I mean, obviously he can develop, but I'm with you on that. It's a good point.
I just think, like, we talk about what if John Campbell might not be ready. We're putting all the eggs in that basket, and I have a lot of confidence that he will be good. But if he doesn't, for some reason, it's not like it's just him or bust. Like, you have some depth behind him. Even Smile Munden last year did some good things in the summer. So I think it's not even just about Campbell. It's about that room, and you can't pay everyone. And unfortunately, because Nakobe's a really good player, the Eagles, it just didn't make sense for them to keep him. So that was always obvious to me. Obviously, the Reed Blankenship one is one where the Eagles could have paid him, right? If they really wanted to. That was not a number, unlike Jalen Phillips, where I think, $30 million is like, no, I don't think anyone's like, oh, why didn't the Eagles pay Jalen Phillips $30 million? I think it's fair to say, by contrast, why didn't they pay Reed Blankenship? And I think Reed Blankenship's a good player, especially not just in terms of what he brings as a talent, but also lining up the defense and the mental side of everything. But it's clear the Eagles just don't want to be in that kind of middle-class market, I think, especially in a multi-year deal, for a player that they just think is not necessarily a player that is special to them. And that's tough. It leaves a big hole at safety because now you have Andrew Makuba coming off injury, entering year 2. And I don't think that solution can be like, you just draft a guy. You draft someone to put next to Makuba. Like, that's right. I don't think that's good enough. So maybe they re-sign Marcus Epps, but they have to do something at safety.
Yeah, they certainly do. Now, one of the intriguing parts from me, I think, how it's going to unfold. Obviously, none of us know at this point, but if you add Riqui Woolen to the mix, at least in the base defense, I think all of a sudden Cooper DeJean plays safety. So maybe you don't need a safety, and they only play base, 10 to 15% of the time at most. But you don't need that guy like Reed Blankenship never left the field. Cooper DeJean can play safety and base all of a sudden, because I think he can do anything. I think the Eagles think he can do anything. And I think Vic likes him in the middle of the field because he can have more of an impact on the game. So I think he'll play safety and base. And then you do need somebody, whether it's Marcus Epps or a draft choice.
So, John, I guess there you can just look for a more specific skill set at safety because you have, right.
I don't think you need that total encompassing leader, traffic cop with Reed Blankenship, which would be tough to find. And maybe you have to go Marcus Epps, as you mentioned, and kind of piecemeal it that way. Is that the way you think they're going to go with Cooper? Because he's going to be on the field, right? They can't take him off the field. So you could take Woolen off the field, but then you got to find the Reed Blankenship safety.
Yeah, I think that's one of the options they could go with. I don't know that it's like the plan A. And, so we have to see how the rest of the offseason shakes out. But that's one of the options. Also, they bring back Michael Carter. Is he a factor? Again, I don't think that's like a plan A for them, but I think they're keeping that in their back pocket in case, the optionality, to have different options there depending on how the secondary shakes out. And I will say on Woolen, we all saw Keely Ringo and Zacharian Bennett late last year.
Yeah.
Like, they can't play. That's just like flat out. They cannot be on the